Today we're going to start talking about how to graph linear functions using some shortcuts rather than the tables that we did last week. So our first focus here is graphing linear equations that are in slope-intercept form. That should actually sound pretty familiar to you. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m represents the slope, which is the rise over the run, and b represents the y-intercept. So we're going to go ahead and add this in here. So our slope in the equation is m, so remember rise over run, and the y-intercept here is b in our equation. Okay, so you've probably done this before. We're going to identify our slope and our y-intercept from the equation, and then use that to help us get a graph. So we're going to go ahead and do these first two. Okay, graph each equation. We're going to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So y equals mx plus b is our form we're looking at. So we're always going to start with our x and find the number in front of it, and that actually gives us our slope. So my slope is 1. Remember, since there's nothing there, I'm going to make it a 1. If there's a number there, we'll use that. I like to make my slope a fraction, so I can always put it over 1 if it's not a fraction. Okay? My y-intercept is whatever's added or subtracted here. In this case, it's a 0. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you how I remember to graph once I find my slope-intercept. And we use slope, m to represent slope and b to represent y-intercept. What I tell my students typically is b stands for begin, m tells us how to move. Okay, so I'm going to start with my b, my beginning point, and go to 0. And that should always go on my y-axis, so it's always going to go on this one that goes up or down. Don't ever go sideways for it. And then from there, we're going to use our slope. Remember, slope is rise over run. So this is telling us to go positive 1, so up 1, and to the right 1. And I'm going to put a point there. And then from that new point, I'm going to do it again. Up 1, right 1. Up 1, right 1. Up 1, right 1. And I could keep going forever. Okay, I could also reverse it to continue the line back the other way. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw my line in. Let's go ahead and go with this one. I'm going to draw my line in there, make sure I have my arrows at the end. And that just saved me a ton of time compared to what we were doing last week with our tables. So hopefully you'll appreciate that. So let's go ahead and make that an arrow. We're good there. Okay, so there's my first line. Let's do another one. Okay, so second equation here. Scroll up a little bit. For b, my slope is always in front of my x. So my slope is -5. And I like to make that a fraction. So I have up and down and then sideways. And then my b is whatever is added or subtracted at the end. So I have a positive 5 there. So b stands for begin. On my y-axis, I'm going to go to positive 5. And my slope tells me how to move. So remember, rise over run. So the top number tells me to go down 5 because it's negative, and then right 1 because it's positive. I'm going to go down 5 again, and right 1. Okay, so I should have made a nice straight line. I'm going to go ahead and draw my line in here. Like this. Okay. And we are done graphing 2 lines. So we just did 2 lines faster than you probably did 1 last week using the tables, because it's just so much faster using the shortcuts. Okay, so there's our 2 lines there. Let's go ahead and turn to the next one. Okay, same idea here. Graph each equation. We're going to use our slope and our y-intercept. Okay, so first, find your slope, always in front of your x. Notice I already have a fraction there. So I have -7. Notice I put the -7 on top, or the negative on top with the 7. That helps me decide what direction to go. Well, I'm going to show you a different way to look at that in a second. And then my b is always added or subtracted. Since this one's subtracted, I have a negative there. Okay, so b stands for begin on my y-axis. I'm going to go down to -4. And then my slope tells me to go down 7, right 5. Well, notice I run out of room if I'm going down 7, right 5. That negative sign can actually switch to the bottom as well. So this tells me rise over run. So now if it's positive, it's telling me to go up 7, but -5 tells me to go left 5. So up 7, left 5 gives me a point back here. Okay, so see how I kind of reversed that? Down into the right didn't fit, so I went up into the back left. This one is a little different than the others because we don't have enough room to do more than 1 point. Typically, I like to do at least 3 points, so I make sure I have a nice straight line there. It doesn't really work here. My arrow's at the end. But, nevertheless, we still have a line there. Okay, because I only really need 2 points to make a line. Let's look at B. Okay, so my slope is 5/2. So up 5, right 2. My y-intercept is -2. So remember, my slope is always in front of my x. My y-intercept, or my b, is always added or subtracted. So y-axis is b, stands for begin. So I'm going to go to -2. And then my slope tells me to go up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then right 2. Okay, and up 5 and right 2. That one doesn't fit. I could also go down 5 and backwards 2 if I wanted to. So I could switch the signs and go backwards if I want to make sure I get another point. Okay, and then draw my line in. Okay, so here's the most confusing part for students with this is points. When we do points or ordered pairs in the parentheses, our points tell us to go sideways first and then up or down. Okay, so this is x comma y. So this is side, this is up or down. Remember, for slope that switches. The top number tells us to go up or down, and this tells us to go sideways. So that is where most people make their mistakes, is they just kind of get those mixed up. The second most common mistake that I see is students forget that B stands for begin on the y-axis, never on the x-axis. Okay? Guided practice problems, go ahead and try those 4. When you finish, show them to me and I will give you your homework. We're going to practice more with graphing and slope-intercept form tomorrow. Your homework today is just graphing and slope-intercept form day 1. If you have any questions, make sure you pause it or rewind it and raise your hand and ask a question. Have a great day.